Hello and welcome to day 25 of the 30 Days of Spectre on this lovely, wonderful Wednesday morning. My name's Tom Sears and I'm joined by my good buddy, Mr. Chris Wright. How are you doing today, Chris?
I am doing spiffingly well.
Spiffingly well indeed.
I'm looking forward to getting our first JBR listeners out there.
Absolutely.
And, getting interviews on the go.
So as we said before, we're turning it over to the listeners this week, and it's going to be interviews with the JBR family all the way home at this point. So our first one today, straight out of the gate, is what must be said, one of the members of the elite 00 section, who were the last men standing at the casino, Empire Casino on Leicester Square, after the Spectre screening there, Mr. Jack Taylor, all the way from Chicago, but studying in London at the moment. So he's our first man. What do you think about that, Chris?
Can't wait to hear what he has to say. I remember him being quite let's leave it up until the interview show.
Quite rude and obnoxious, is that what you were about to say?
I wasn't really too keen when I met him because no, I'm only joking. He's a lovely guy, so yeah, it'd be great to hear what he has to say.
Absolutely, good stuff. He's got some good solid opinions on his Bond and all that kind of stuff. So we'll turn over to him in just a second. But before we do so, make sure you come and join us on the old Facebook page and Twitter. Just put James Bond Radio into the search box. Come and subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll find us on there as well. Just type in James Bond Radio. Come over to jamesbondradio.com and join in the conversation in the comments area. And obviously you can leave us a voicemail on there as well. If you want to leave your 90-second Spectre review, that is most welcome. Time's ticking on now, so make sure you get those in because we'll be closing the door on that in a day or two now. And obviously, if you could come over to iTunes and leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review, that would be really, really lovely because that really helps us rank higher in the charts and attract more listeners. So, without further ado then, let's turn it over and see what Mr. Jack Taylor, all the way from Chicago, Illinois, has to say about Spectre.
So here we are on our first 30 Days of Spectre interview, and with us is Mr. Jack Taylor, who is from Chicago, but obviously studying in London at the moment. So say hello, Jack.
Hello, Jack.
I love it. Nice. How you doing, Jack? You all right?
Doing quite well today. I'm very excited to talk some Spectre. Excited to share my thoughts. So
excellent. And with us is obviously my good buddy and esteemed co-host, Mr. Tom Sears. How you doing, Tom?
Hello. I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to talk to Jack. Obviously, one thing we should point out is that Jack was one of the elite 00 section members who were one of the last men standing at the casino on Leicester Square after the Spectre viewing. So we're in good company today for sure.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Okay, so what we're going to do is pretty much like the interviews of past. We're going to do some quick fire questions, and then we'll go into a bit more meat and veg about Spectre itself. Okay?
Yeah,
wicked.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first quick fire question is, Mr. Jack Taylor, what is your favourite James Bond film?
GoldenEye. It was the first one I ever saw. The first exposure to Bond was the N64 video game, GoldenEye. Nice. So yeah, and then I happened to see the film after that. I think I was only like 5 or 6 at the time, and I thought, whoa. At first, I thought GoldenEye was the only Bond film. Like I didn't think it was a whole franchise. And then I opened my eyes quite a bit and saw everything. It was like, man, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
So GoldenEye for nostalgic reasons, practically, and Pierce is my favorite Bond, so I guess that's another question here. So
you've just spoiled one of the future quickfire questions.
Oh no,
but no worries. But excellent choice. GoldenEye's a favorite for sure. So question number 2 is: what is your favorite Bond book?
Here's the thing: I'm not into reading at all, but I have.
I like it.
The Flemings, I have, or not the entire things, but some chapters here and there, just to say I've actually picked up a book and read. I started reading Dr. No a little bit this summer, and it was cool how they go into detail about Strangways and about his secretary, Trueblood is her name, right?
Yeah.
Trueblood. Yeah. I think it's so cool because it's like the films are almost an abridged version of the entire story, and the books, it's like the whole thing. It's the whole story. So I will get around to reading them, but and I also read a bit of Casino Royale. I like Dr. No quite a bit so far. So
excellent. Sounds good. Sounds good. Now, this one could be a bit tricky, but who do you think is your favourite James Bond girl? Now, this could be perhaps visually or perhaps by character, or maybe just give us one for each. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give you one for each. Okay. Visually, Dr. Madeline Swan. It's quite a shocker to some people, I think. But the thing I love most about her is that, she's not like the Denise Richards. She's not like the supermodel. She's just one of those girls, naturally beautiful. The train scene, perfect example. When she comes walking up in that dress, it's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
But yeah, Leia Seydoux for visual Bond girl. Character, I'm gonna have to go with Tracy. I mean, you really can't pick anybody else, I think, because it's so essential to not only the story but to Bond's life, and she's referenced later on in the film. So I think there's a lot to that character, more so than there is to Kara or I don't know, any of the other bimbos, as you guys call them. But yeah, so I like Tracy quite a bit.
Cool, good choice.
I think that moment on the train in Spectre is that definitely stood out to me as a goodness me moment. One of those for sure.
Then when she's talking in French, when we first see her, when she's doing the logs on the whatever you call it, and she's speaking in French, and it's just like, French is like one of the best languages in the world, anyways. City of love and whatnot. But I like Leia Seydoux.
Very nice.
Lovely.
Good choice. Now, obviously, you already answered this a little bit earlier, but your favourite Bond actor is Pierce. So let's elaborate on that a bit. What do you like about Pierce so much?
Well, it's kind of something that, I've heard it. He gets criticized a lot for it, but he doesn't necessarily have his own take on the role. The way I look at it, he just kind of blends everybody together. Like, he's got Roger's humor. He's got Sean's suave demeanor, and when he has to, he's got Timothy's darkness. You look at the pre-title sequence of The World's Not Enough in the banker's office. He's got that. He just got when he just takes out the whole office, and then he does that look, and he's got this look in his eyes that's like, man, this guy's a killer. And I don't know. I think he's probably the best all-around Bond. I think so. He can pull off any scene well.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it? Everyone disses him. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people diss him at the moment.
Surprisingly, a lot.
It is, and I think it's one of those things. I remember Mark O'Connell said this: is that when the new guy comes along, the ex-husband always kind of gets a slagging off kind of thing.
Yeah.
But some of those scenes, man, are like for example when he shoots Electra King point blank in the face. I mean that's like one of the like especially somebody. It's not like shooting an evil kind of like henchman type in the face. It's shooting one of the world's most beautiful women in the face, and I don't think it gets darker than that, really.
No, it's good.
Yeah. He does a lot. Probably my favorite Brosnan moment is in GoldenEye when he the pre-title sequence when he comes down the stairs and then he's he ducks up against the wall. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And, and it's like and then when he delivers the name's Bond, James Bond to Xenia, I think that's one of the best deliveries of the franchise.
That is a cracking delivery, that one, for sure. It's a great one. So what would you say? Oh, God, this one will be very tricky as well, I'd imagine. But what would you say is your favourite scene in the entire series of Bond?
Oh. I haven't thought about that one because there's just so many. I don't know. There's a lot of great ones. As of now, and this maybe will spoil a question here too, but right now, the train fight from Spectre, maybe it's just because I'm getting off the Spectre high a little bit, but I don't know. That's going to hold up pretty well for me.
Yeah.
So.
That is a brutal one, isn't it? I mean, I suppose the obvious fight to go for, especially train-based fight, would be from Russia, but man, that fight is brutal. Like you feel every single punch, don't you, in that
just like
sequence.
You said, yeah. Oh, it's great. That's wonderful.
I think there's more furniture that's broken in that fight than like any other fight I've ever seen. Just like things smashing everywhere. It's
you
great.
know what? The last time I saw it, there's that bit where Hinks has kind of got his hands over his face like that, and he's kind of pulling him backwards. And there's just these like noises Daniel's making. He's like like that, and it's like you just feel every single thing. Like he's like a man mountain, isn't he, Hinks? And I think that fight is definitely going to go down as a classic for sure.
Well, and now that I'm thinking about it, another one that springs to mind immediately is Bond and Trevelyan on the antenna cradle. Mm. That fight sequence, I think, because it's two double O's going at it, can't get better than that. And I think that one, in terms of choreography, I think that one's right up there in the top 3 of the franchise. So. Yeah,
that is a good one too. Good stuff. So I think you briefly touched on this already, but what is your earliest memory of Bond? So I guess it's the Nintendo 64 game.
That's right. Yeah, my brother and I, we were big. We were big into the Nintendo 64, and yeah, we used to play GoldenEye all the time. 00 Agent, we could never beat it. It was just so difficult. And we had one of our next door neighbors came over and just beat the whole thing for us. And yeah, we just loved it. And then I think I caught it on cable. I think I caught the movie on cable, and I watched it with my brother. We slept in the basement that night because it was a late night showing. So yeah, that was my first exposure to Bond, and kind of been riding off the Bond high ever since.
So who is better, you or your brother?
I mean, he'll say he is, of course, but if he's watching this, I have to say I am.
Yeah.
And what character would you choose in multiplayer?
Well, I'm the little brother, so he would always pick Bond. Yeah. So then I would always pick Billion. The same thing. That's why I would always pick Luigi. While he would be Mario, I'd be Luigi. Just little brother syndrome. So.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so here's an interesting one. I'm not sure if you visited any, but what is your favourite Bond location that you have visited, and what location that you haven't would you like to visit the most?
That's a great question. I was just in Paris about a month ago, and I did the whole A View to a Kill thing there. That was pretty fun, but I think my favorite is probably Fort Knox in Kentucky.
You've been there?
Yeah, I've been there. We were driving down to Florida for spring break with my family, and my dad and I said, "Hey, let's go to Fort Knox. Let's just stop by and see what it's like." And it's funny because I was like, "Oh, Goldfinger, Dad, take a picture of me." So I stood out in front of Fort Knox with Fort Knox behind me and everything, and within like 2 minutes, we have this big squad, security car pull over right next to us. He goes, "I'm going to need to see your camera." I said, "Why?" He goes, "You need to delete those pictures immediately." So you're kidding? He goes, "Yeah, what you did is totally illegal. We could throw you in jail for that." I'm like, "You're joking." And the security is so tight down there. So yeah, I had a photo on my camera and then on my phone too, but I just deleted the ones on the camera, so I was able to sneak away.
Very Bond-like of you.
That one's like be framed and put on my desk later on. But yeah, that was so cool just to see everything in the way. Because I think, what is it? Ken Adam was allowed one flyover, right? So one flyover.
I think General Rushon gave him one flyover. Okay. I think. Yeah.
But it's so cool to see how spot on they were. Just looking at it, they got everything down to the last detail. It's fantastic. So I would say Fort.
And that also kind of answers a question which we weren't sure about asking, was what is the most Bondian thing you've ever done? But I think taking a photo of Fort Knox and then still keeping one secretly behind after the security have come over, that's got to be...
Hopefully, nobody listens to this and tracks me down or anything. But yeah, that was pretty Bondian. I can't think of... I guess having a vodka martini in the casino while wearing a suit following Spectre, that was probably the most Bondian thing I've ever done, actually. But to go back to the other question about which location would I like to visit, Tom, I saw your Austria, the Vienna location video, and that looked pretty cool. I don't know. I've been to San Francisco when I was very little, like 8 years old or something like that, but I would love to go back to it now, knowing all the locations and whatnot. So I think San Francisco I would have to revisit and, pay attention to all that sort of stuff.
Climb up on the bridge and stuff and run around up there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Cool stuff. I'm impressed about the Fort Knox thing, man. You didn't mention Goldfinger to them or anything like that when the guards came over.
We're like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we're just huge James Bond fans, and he goes, "I understand, but this is, this is a government law, blah blah blah." Yeah. They get with that sort of stuff. So it was just kind of, it is what it is. I was able to sneak away.
Cool. Yeah, nicely. So that is the 007 quickfire questions taken care of. Obviously designed to give the listeners an idea of where you're coming from in your fandom and your tastes with Bond, which I think directly reflects on the next batch of questions we're going to ask you, which is obviously going to be Spectre related. So question number 1, Mr. Jack Taylor, is: are you a Spectre lover, a hater, or somewhere in between?
I'm somewhere in between. I don't know if you guys remember when you guys were waiting at Leicester Square and everybody came out and you were asking everybody, "What'd you think? What'd you think?" Everybody was ecstatic, just, "Oh, it's great, it's fantastic, it's like one of the best Bonds." And then Chris, I think it was you. You're like, "Jack, what'd you think of it?" And I said, "It's okay." And then you guys were just kind of like shocked, like, "Oh, okay." I've seen it 4 times though, and each time it does get better. So I'm at the stage where I like it. It's not perfect. I'm not in love with it, but I like it. It's a good Bond film.
A solid effort, yeah.
Definitely. Solid answer for a solid effort, definitely. So question 2, now we kind of know this, but just so everyone can sort of hear, what is your first viewing experience of seeing Spectre?
Well, I did the meetup with you guys, the JBR family meetup beforehand, and then I didn't get tickets to the Albert Hall. I didn't apply for them. But I went and I saw the premiere and everything. I got to see a glimpse of Daniel, and Ray Fiennes and Sam Mendes actually came around. And then Barbara came down like to where we were, because we were pretty far down, so we had gotten there late. So yeah, I think it was Ray Fiennes, Barbara, and Sam that came down and signed for everybody. So that was cool. And then after that, we saw the 11 o'clock or 11:30 premiere at Leicester Square at the Odeon. So
was there a good atmosphere going into that screening? Were people buzzing?
Yeah. Well, it was funny because it was me, Sam Allen, Luke Arnold, and a couple other guys. We were all out there, and it was after, because I think they had a 7:30 showing there beforehand, and it was after everybody was pouring out of the theater. So we were just standing there like this. We didn't want to catch anything. We saw a girl crying. It's pretty weird. I don't know what she could have been crying about.
Wow.
But yeah, the atmosphere was fantastic. I think the one thing that we were all talking about was the gun barrel. Everybody wanted the gun barrel. And Em was saying how I'm going to scream if it comes on. I'm going to scream. And then sure enough, it comes on and you just hear gun barrel coming from the upper deck. It's great. There was a good atmosphere there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. So what would you say then is your favorite part of Spectre?
The train fight.
Nice.
Without a doubt. The torture scene is getting up there for me, but nothing compares to the train fight. That's my favorite bit.
Yeah, you got to kind of agree with that. It's the sort of scene that you would happily just watch on loop, isn't it? It's that good. And just the way that Hink sort of appears, the reflection, it's just so hard hitting. I love that scene as well. Yeah, brilliant scene.
Plus, you get the lead in with Madeline in that fantastic dress as well, so you get a little treat before the fight kicks off, which is really nice.
And afterwards as well.
And afterwards, indeed, especially for Daniel. But did you enjoy, as a GoldenEye man, did you enjoy the little thing where you see Hinks' reflection coming up in the cocktail shaker? Because that's like
I did. Expect Daniel Craig to turn around with that towel. Right to his face. It's funny you bring that up. I picked up on a couple GoldenEye references in Spectre, or the helicopter in the title sequence when come on, and and then whoosh, and then the Bond theme blares. Very GoldenEye. But yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. I think that was a good. That was a good bit of the film. I'm trying to think what I was going to say. You guys have mentioned how he comes in with that 3-piece suit on, Dave Bautista, and it's just like, because not only are you about to just cause some shit, but you're doing it in style, and that's awesome. It's fantastic. I think Chris, you just said, or maybe it was you, Tom, who said you replay, you can watch it over and over again. There's a clip on YouTube. I managed to find YouTube of like the last 30 seconds of that fight or whatever, and I've basically done that. I just watched it over and over and over again. Each time, it's just like, because you notice things that you don't see right away. So
nice, sounds good. So, if anything, what would you change about Spectre? Is there anything that you could change if you would?
There's quite a bit I would change actually towards the end. I don't know where to start. I think. What do you guys? I guess you're going to get to it later on this month, but I was going to the MI6 scene. Like I don't feel that it's all that great, because especially comparing it to the final act of Skyfall. People say, "Oh, that's Home Alone and everything." Well, that's the most suspenseful bit of Skyfall, I think, because you have Javier Bardem, who's just a maniac, and you have all these explosions. That Skyfall house explosion was, to me, I know it's not the biggest, but to me, the biggest explosion on the screen anyways. Spectre just didn't do that. I think in the basement of the MI6 when, Blofeld's got all these pictures of Lashif, Silva, Vesper, everybody on there. It's like, that didn't really do anything for me, because it's just like Google image search, Eva Green, Judi Dench, and then he just tapes them up on the wall. Like, that's not menacing at all. That's not evil. It's just like, yeah, okay, these are characters from Bond's past, but what good is a picture going to do? Like, is it going to make him burst out into tears? One thing I was thinking about this, one thing I think would have been a good touch is if somehow Blofeld got his hands on Vesper's necklace and then brought that back. Because when Bond throws it in the snow, maybe, they would have sent someone, Spectre, to that location where Vesper's boyfriend gets caught or whatever. They could have retrieved that necklace and then brought it back here. And maybe he could have done, some sort of remnants like that, with Vesper's necklace. Or I'm trying to think, if Bond didn't have the bulldog, used M's bulldog there or something like that. I think that would have been a little more effective. But
I suppose you wouldn't even need to go that far, because if I remember right, at the end of Quantum, when he confronts like Vesper's boyfriend, when he's with the Canadian intelligence woman, she's got an Algerian love knot on, hasn't she?
She has as well, yeah.
So that's like obviously his modus operandi. So it's like I don't think you would even have to go to that stretch to retrieve Vesper's specific necklace. But you could just have one of those and be like, remember this, James?
Or you could just like pick it up off eBay. I think they sell them on eBay as well, so you could have just done that.
That is true. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, eBay. I wonder what they're selling.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, though, that you mentioned that, and how, because some people I think quite like the photos and stuff going back, but I can see where you're coming from. So something like the necklace would have been interesting. Is there anything else in per se that you might have changed, or was that the main thing?
I guess that's sort of the main thing. I mean, a small gripe I have is about Silva. I just don't think it's logical for Silver to be a part of Spectre, because I think his vendetta with M is solely his. I don't think it has anything to do with the organization or anything. So I think it was a bit of a stretch to associate Silva with Spectre. I've always kind of looked at Silva like, he's apart from Quantum, he's apart from Spectre, kind of like Goldfinger is with Spectre. Mm-hmm. Like I've always kind of viewed him as that. So there's that bit. And then at the end, the time you hit the nail on the head, how great choice not killing off Blofeld, because we can bring him back. But the way Bond throws his gun across the bridge, and there's a lot in there to make you think like, okay, so he's quitting, or, he's retiring from the service. I know you guys brought that up in a recent episode. I think there's quite a bit there that kind of signifies he's retiring from the service with, he said, "Oh, I've got better things to do," and then walks over to Madeline and then holds her hand as they're walking away. With the whole "I love you" bit. I just think that it's not very plausible what happens on screen, and it takes a lot to make Bond want to retire from what he does and change what he does for a girl. And I just wasn't convinced that Madeline is the one to do that just yet. If she comes back for another film, then maybe they can build that relationship a little bit more. But as of now, I don't see Madeline any different than I do Natalia from Goldeneye, for instance, or Pam Bouvier. There's really nothing there.
I think. Did you listen to the Sam Mendes interview in the Empire podcast?
No, I never got around to that.
That's worth a listen, because he talks, like, basically the interviewer asks him a lot of questions that naturally would come up from watching Spectre. And one of the things he asks him is about the end, and Mendes says that he wanted to convey that he was ready to quit and go off and live a normal life kind of thing, but do it in such a way that it's not, if you wanted to interpret it a different way, you perhaps could. So essentially leaving it a little bit open. But at the same time, his intention was to give that impression of the fact that he's kind of jacking it all in, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah. So it's kind of, right. So did you get that impression then that, like, because some people came out saying, "Oh my God, Bond 25 is going to be amazing. It's perfectly set up." Some people come out saying, "This feels like Daniel's last Bond." Where do you sit on that?
No, I think Daniel will be back. He has to be back. I've got some theories about Bond 25, and just like you guys have been hinting at the whole month, I just worry that it's going to become a remake of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I really do, because they've clearly established that this reboot is, a separate setting from Sean, from Roger's Bond. This is, not only is it rebooted, but it's on like a whole different timeline. So I just worry that they're going to start to remake it a little bit. But we'll see. I think Daniel will be back for sure. And you could almost make the case that a lot of the same characters are going to be back with Léa Seydoux, Christoph Waltz. So we'll see where it goes. It'll be interesting for sure.
It is interesting. I saw a post somewhere online about it being a different sort of almost like a different dimension Bond kind of thing, where none of that previous stuff has happened or might not even happen in the future, in the sense that he might one day go on to meet Goldfinger, for example. But one of them was saying that what they should do is in the next movie or one of the future movies is bring back Dr. No and have him played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And I thought, that's good casting if you were going to reinvent Dr. No.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I've heard Ben Kingsley's name has been touted as well for a future Dr. No as well. It's quite interesting. Yeah. But yeah.
How would you guys feel about that? To bring back old characters and revive them. What do you think about that?
I'm in two minds. Like, there's part of me that would be really curious to see it, and then the other half of me that would hate it. And then I guess it's just because for me, you can't remake Goldfinger, you can't remake Dr. No, you can't remake Thunderball or Majesties or all of those because they're so brilliant. I don't want to see them remade, but there's part of me that is so curious to see how they would do it if they did. And there's a lot of opportunities as well for, You Only Live Twice, for example, is completely different to the book. And Moonraker, there's another one that you could go back and make those films again, but do them true to the story and not what we actually got on screen. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I would say, curiously to see it for sure, but I part of me would say it's being lazy. I'm in two minds because obviously the main Fleming characters have run out, so it's like, okay, are you original? Do you come up with new characters which are Fleming like, or like you can't revisit? Okay, imagine if you revisit them again and we got a new Dr. No. What happens in 30, 40 years' time? And they're like, oh, we've gone through, there's two Dr. No's, there's two Goldfingers, there's like 8 Blofelds, there's like, two Strombergs, 2 Draxes, what are we going to do next? You couldn't do that. You really, in my eyes, it's a really interesting concept in terms of seeing how they'd do it. But I really think Blofeld for me is the only one that you could do it because it's happened before and that's his character. I really wouldn't want to see a new Dr. No, a new Goldfinger. Come up with someone who's just as good, give him a different name and a different background. Let's be creative here. That's my view anyway.
What do you think then, Jack? How do you stand on that one?
Yeah, I just as Chris said, it could be lazy. I think we've seen, I hate to go back to Pierce Brosnan again, but, we've seen these characters kind of made up of thin air. Even with Silva, we've seen these characters made up out of thin air, and I think they could still keep on doing that. Of course, any film franchise that runs for, half a century, you're going to run out of ideas. But that's what makes the movie business so interesting, is that you can keep on coming up with these new ideas and hiring these screenwriters. And I think Purvis and Wade are definitely capable of coming up with new ideas. I don't feel the need to return to remakes, and I would be disappointed if they did, because I think that would take away a little bit of the value of the old films. Like if they were to remake Live and Let Die, for instance, rewatching that, it would just be like, okay, and you'd be comparing it in your head, like, oh, this, has changed differently later on, and I think it would just decrease the value of the original films. That's my opinion. So. And
once they've remade everything, where do you go from there? Like that would be the end of the series, because that's the only way that I could see the series ending, is doing a complete remake of every Bond film that we've got, because then it's that, I don't know. I think it's ludicrous.
To be honest, though, I do think on some level it is inevitable eventually. Like, he's been around for over 50 years now. Once Barbara and Michael have retired and they're out of the game, and then, Greg's the main man, and, maybe a couple of generations down the line, when it gets to the point that Dr. No is 100 years old, for example, it might be a point where they go, let's remake him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do think it's inevitable at some stage. Whether they'd remake them all, I don't know. But yeah, it is a tough one. But I think definitely, the fact that you can, for Silva, to me, feels like a Fleming character, his whole thing, even his speech as he comes forward and all that kind of business just feels like Fleming. So if you can do that, then, and Le Chiffre as well, his performance is so different to what you read in the book of Le Chiffre. He was like an overweight, sort of like, just sort of gross bloke in the book compared to the film.
Welles, right?
Yeah.
Orson Welles,
and all that. So I feel like, if you can do that with an actual Fleming character and still make him amazing, which the Le Chiffre in Casino Royale is amazing, he's one of my favorite villains, then the ground is still ripe for fresh villains and stories, I guess. So, big question then: how do you feel Spectre compares to Skyfall? Do you think it's a step up, a step down, or just a step along the line?
I think it's a step down, and not a significant step down. I enjoy Spectre, but Skyfall, and we had this conversation briefly. Skyfall, to me, it's a top 3 Bond film. It's even after 3 years or however long it's been. It's right up there. It's got everything that you want. It's got great cinematography. And Roger Deakins, his work is amazing. Thomas Newman, he had a good score in that. And that's another thing I'm kind of disappointed about Spectre is the score. I feel like a lot of it's recycled, just recycled from Skyfall. But yeah, Skyfall was one of those things. And plus, coming off of Quantum, I was so disappointed in Quantum. So Skyfall was a huge relief, and it said, okay, now we're back to classic Bond, and that's why I thought, thank God we're finally back. Because initially I was kind of disappointed with Casino Royale because it was so different. But I love that movie now. It's fantastic. But yeah, I think it's a step down from Skyfall. So.
And what would you say within the range of Craig films? Where would you place Spectre then?
I'd place it third. I'd say Skyfall, Casino Royale, Spectre, and then Quantum.
Interesting. You put Skyfall above Casino. Talk to me. Tell me about that.
They're both in my top 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. Oh. All right. Cool stuff. So, excellent. Final question of the day then is: where would you say Spectre falls among the entire series?
I've given this some thought, and I think it's still a little early, but I mean, after seeing it 4 times, I guess I have an understanding. I would put it probably in the bottom quarter. I hate to say it, but there's only 2 films that I don't really like in the series, and that's Quantum and Thunderball. And I know you guys are going to give me a lot of...
Okay, this is some interesting stuff. Okay, go on.
Yeah. But yeah, Quantum and Thunderball, I don't like. All the other ones I really enjoy. It's just a matter of which one do I enjoy more. And Spectre, I think, would kind of fall towards the bottom, probably, 15, 16, 17, that range. And not to say it's a bad film, not to say I don't enjoy it. It's just not quite as enjoyable as some of the others for me.
Cool. So, fair enough.
Interesting.
So I guess actually final question is let's hear a roundup of your Bond 25 predictions, or rather, what would you want to see from Bond 25? If Spectre is a step down from Skyfall for you, what would it take to get a step back up?
Okay. Well, building off of the way Spectre ended, and starting immediately with Blofeld, when you see him crawling down Westminster Bridge, he's got this big gash in his leg. And so my theory is that he's going to be immobilized for a while. So he's going to sit in his chair and he's going to operate out of his chair. I think it'll be so expensive to bring Christoph Waltz back. I think they'll have Blofeld in the story. Well, I guess he's obviously got to escape somehow. So I guess they will bring Waltz back. But he'll be more of kind of what Blofeld was in From Russia with Love and Thunderball, in a sense. I don't think that he'll be the main villain. I think there'll be like a number 2 or number 3, that sort of thing. And personally, I'm probably alone on this idea, but I don't want Madeline Swan to come back because I think that's getting too much into Tracy territory in terms of falling in love. And, the way Blofeld looks at Bond and Madeline holding hands, he's got that look in his eye that says, I'm going to destroy the one thing that you have left, and that's Madeline. So I don't know if you guys have similar thoughts. You'll reveal that later on in another episode, I'm sure. But I think something is going to happen to Madeline that's going to encourage Bond to go back into the service. So.
Okay. There we go. Good stuff. So yeah, that is my prediction, is that what we're going to see is the original Fleming Blofeld trilogy, or at least a new take on it, come through. So this would be the equivalent of a Thunderball. Then next up we'll get because obviously there's the whole thing of that shot at the end of Majesty's when they drive away from the wedding, the camera comes up on a crane shot, and that was like the insurance that might have been the end of the film, and then Tracy was going to get shot at the beginning of Diamonds. They were playing around with that for a while. So I feel like that's the idea they're going to use for Bond 25 is that. opening sequence, she gets mullered, and then it's like a revenge story. And then the third movie would be What You Only Live Twice is in the book, but like done to that story, which is completely different to the movie, obviously. So yeah, that's what my fingers are crossed for anyway.
Yeah. Interesting times ahead. Hey,
how about you, Chris?
I'm not sure. I've got like millions of things going around my head at the moment. It'll probably take me an hour or two to go through it, but I think we're going to see the breakout at the start. I think it'll probably be a clad figure who we don't know who it is. We think it's Bond, but it turns out to be Hinks, and he breaks Blofeld out of wherever he is, and we don't actually see Bond in the pre-titles, like Live and Let Die and Man with Golden Gun. We think we are watching him, but we're not. We're watching Hinks or whoever else it might be to break Blofeld free, and then the rest of the film I'll come back to a later podcast. Yeah.
Well, that actually brings up something in my mind. I think Hinks was underused very much, and because he's going to go down as one of my favorite henchmen of all time. I think he's right up there already with Jaws and Oddjob. But yeah, you guys mentioned when Bond and M are driving to the CNS building and they get T-boned in that tunnel. Yeah. I would have thought, I would have bet $1 million that Hinks would come out of that car. I was just when he didn't. But yeah, I would definitely like to see him come back, and like you guys were talking about, maybe have more of the daggers in there next time.
Definitely.
So that he can establish. Because I thought when I first saw the Bond Hinks fight on the train, I thought he tried doing that. As we mentioned, when he had, his hands over Daniel's face, and you can hear it's almost like this crunching sound, like he is digging into Daniel's eyeballs, and Bond's going ah, and so I thought that was his attempt on the train to try and dig out his eyes or whatever. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he comes back.
Cool.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed indeed. Well, that's just about all we've got time for. So thank you for joining us, Jack. Obviously, thanks for joining us on the JBR family meetup as well. It was good to meet you in the flesh, and good to have you on the show.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers, Jack. Right. Been a pleasure catching up, and really interesting points as well. Excellent fun.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Take care, buddy.
See you.
Bye.
So there we are, Mr. Jack Taylor giving us his thoughts. What do you think, Tom? Any sort of unusuals or anything that you liked about his?
Yeah, man, that was a cool little chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. That Fort Knox story, man, that's a brilliant one. How cool is that?
And being so Bondian about it, like 2 cameras, keeping one back. I want to see the photo. We'll have to sneak that photo somehow.
Whether he would immediately get him thrown into jail or something, or I don't know, but.
If he's sneaky enough to keep one handy, I'm sure he can find a way to send it over by decoded cryptic message.
Without a doubt, yeah, completely. I like it. But no, like you say, very Bondian maneuver there. Two cameras, very secretive, handing one over. They delete it all, but little do they know. I mean, that's a pretty gnarly little trick there. I like that.
Maybe he works for the CIA undercover.
Maybe that's why he's here. Maybe it's a cover story. I'm a student studying. No, you're not. You're over here spying. Yeah, absolutely. Won't put it past him. Good stuff. So that about wraps out our first interview for the 30 Days of Spectre listener takeover. We will obviously be back tomorrow with more. And of course, we're releasing on a schedule of 2 interviews per day at the moment. So we also have an interview with my good friend, Mr. Ian Coop, that's come out today as well. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, make sure you check out that one as well, because that's a good old bit of Bondian banter. He's been on a journey of introducing his wife to all the Bond films in the lead up to going to watch Spectre. So there's some interesting chit chat to be had there as well.
And so if everyone could come and join us on the social media, on the Facebooks, Twitters, website, everything like that. I think everyone knows it about now.
They know how to do it. If they've been following the 30 Days of Spectre, they know how to do it. And if they haven't got involved, they're just being bloody stubborn. Dang nabbit. Yeah.
Dang nabbit. A couple of things definitely to point out. With the 90-second, if you go to our website, click on leave a voicemail, 90 seconds to leave a Spectre review. We've had some cracking ones coming in. We want to hear people have their say. So if you're unsure about it, just do it and just go for it.
Don't be shy. Get involved.
Don't be shy. You get involved, exactly, and then you get to hear your 90-second. In fact, one of my mates was telling me something quite interesting.
Oh, yeah.
There's an app that you can speed up the sound delivery by like 1.5 times or 2 times or whatever. And he does that on some podcasts to like make them go quicker. But there's also part of that app, you can like reduce the speed by a half. So if anyone comes on and speaks for 90 seconds as fast as they can, and then what we can do is we can just detune it at half speed and then hear what they have to say.
This is going to get crazy. We're going to have chipmunks and Darth Vader giving reviews on different days depending on how long or little they've spoken. But yeah, good stuff. Absolutely exciting times. And then last but not least, before we go, obviously there's the donation link over on jamesbondradio.com. If you want to help us out, that's always appreciated. Obviously nobody should ever feel obligated to do so, but as I say, it's always appreciated, any contributions. That's lovely stuff. Okay, so and if you're going to go and listen to the Ian Coop episode, which is also out today, we'll see you very, very shortly. If not, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, take care, everyone, and hope you enjoyed it.
Right, we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.